What is going on, guys? It's the Mad Dragon. We are back doing another preview video. This is, of course, where we chuck on a game of Rugby 22 in the background of the teams that are going to be playing this weekend. And then over the top, we talk about the official teams that have been announced that are going to be playing in this game, who we think is going to do well, who we think is going to do badly, and finally give a score prediction of how we think this game is going to go at the end. This one is between France and Ireland, arguably the game for the tournament. It's going to be a massive game, so let's get it kicked off and underway. Alrighty, Enter Mack will get us kicked off. Let's start to the right with the wind. Got pretty much full power on there. We'll kick it nice and deep. Put Ireland back into their own 22. So, France versus Ireland, a game every year that everyone is super excited to watch. It's normally a really tight game, normally only a few points in it. It's just an absolute fight to the death. Has been resolved in the past between drop goals and what have you. So, this is one of the games I'm really looking forward to this year. Who should we start off talking about first? Let's start off talking about Ireland first, because Ireland, of course, last week had their game against Wales, and as a Wales supporter, what a hard game that was to watch. Ireland pretty much decimating the Wales team in every area of the pitch. I don't think I've ever seen a team actually dominate in so many areas over the other team in a long time. That game ended something like 24-7 or something. I can't remember what it ended. Wales arguably didn't even deserve the 7 points they got. It was one mistake, Ireland's probably only mistake in that game, that led to those 7 points. Nice try from Tame Basham. But Ireland will be very happy with that performance. I actually felt like they weren't really even in top gear in that game. I think they played pretty well and they did all the basics well, but I certainly think they may have been slightly reserved getting ready for this game. So really excited to see what they bring to it. So let's start off talking about the Ireland team that's been announced for this game. Starting off in this front row, we have Andrew Porter in that loose head shirt, Ronan Keller in that hooker position, and Tig Furlong in that tight head position. So, there's not going to be a lot of changes, not going to lie. Throughout most of this team, you're not going to hear a great deal of changes from the team that played the Wales team. I don't think this is a terrible move. I think pretty much the front row in that Wales game just sort of owned the scrums, owned the mauling. They knew what they were doing, so no need to start changing stuff around and making huge impacts, to be honest. But I think, there'll be potential here for some driving maul tries in this game, so you want to have a big, powerful front row. On to the lock department. Pretty much the same as last week. We've got Tig Byrne in that 4 position and James Ryan in that number 5 shirt. However, James Ryan taking over the captaincy this week because no Johnny Sexton just got announced a few hours ago. Johnny Sexton picking up a big hamstring injury, so won't be taking part in this game. So it'll be interesting to see how that changes the dynamic of this game. James Ryan been captain a long time, though, very used to it, so not going to be too difficult for him, but it's going to be a big game to take over that captaincy again. Thought Johnny Sexton played very well last week, especially in just running the team generally, so big move on him. But Tig Byrne obviously normally has a good game. I think this line-up system will be working pretty well for them. And then in the back row, Keelan Doris, Van der Fleer and Jack Conan. Of course, this was exactly what we saw last week, and all of them playing very well. Keelan Doris gave away a couple of issues. I thought there was a couple of drop balls and a couple of penalties here and there from him, which is a bit of a shame. He's not a bad player at all, just little things not going quite right for him. However, Van der Fleer had an extremely good running game, and Jack Conan really making a big impact from that number 8 shirt. So again, no need to make big changes. So this 1-8 looking solid. They've had a full game's experience now playing that Wales team, being able to beat that team in so many different areas. I think this will work well for them. Obviously, we've got those jumpers. Did see Jack Conan getting in the air last week, which was a bit of a surprise in terms of the lineouts. Normally, you'd be expecting Tig Byrne and James Ryan to be dominating that area. Keelan Doris, also a very tall man. Was surprised to see a couple of the lineouts actually going to Jack Conan. Maybe they're going to start trying to line him up for this game a little bit in terms of the lineouts. Bit of a different jumper, try and throw France off a little bit. But overall, 1-8, very solid. On to the halfback partnership. Jameson Gibson Park heading that 9 shirt, and of course now Joey Carberry coming in the fly half position with no Sexton in. So, a lot of pressure on the young lad. I mean, he's going to have to make a big impact in this game. There's a lot of talk at the minute about the second choice fly half. Johnny Sexton just stands out so much in this Ireland team as the first choice. Carberry, Carty, all these people now fighting out for this position. So it'll be interesting to see how he gets on. Hopefully he can hold it together, but I can imagine France will be using him as a bit of a target in this game, as just somewhere to try and apply the pressure to, see if they can throw him off his game a little bit. On to the centre partnerships again, same as we saw last week, Aki and Ringrose, both of which went over for a try against Wales. Bundy Aki, as much as a good player is, you never really see him go over for a lot of tries. Certainly hasn't got a great deal in his international career with Ireland, but I'm absolutely happy to move out to that space. Ireland are obviously shifting up their attack run a little bit. They're more than happy to move these wingers now off their winger positions and move their centres out wide, allowing that extra man overlap, and it worked really, really well. Gary Ringrose has had a good couple of years, but I think has been a little bit sort of average, I would say. Had some really good games, then had some quite poor games. He's been a bit 50-50. However, that game against Wales last week was a brilliant game from him. The single man try from the halfway line, outrunning 5 people and managing to get over for a try, scoring loads in the fantasy. Not a bad pick at all for those people who went for him. So I think he'll be looking to do the same again. Not sure how much the backs will be opened up in this game. I imagine this game will come down, as it normally does every year, to a very forward-based game. So we'll be interested to see how they get on. And then finally in this back three, Mack Hanson, who had a great debut in that number 11 shirt, Andrew Conway on the right wing, and Keenan in that fullback position. Now, Mack Hanson, big impact. You want to make a good impression from your debut. Certainly managing to do that. Really nice to see from him. Got some good speed on him. And we'll be looking forward to seeing how he gets on in this game. I mean, the French wingers are fast, but I think Mack Hanson's probably just as fast, in all honesty. He certainly was keeping up with Zammit on that wing, which is something you don't really see a lot from the international scene in terms of wingers. Andrew Conway, of course, also having his 2 tries last week, which is nice to see for him. So, again, big impact there, managing to retain that shirt. There's been a lot of talks, again, about that 14 shirt. Should Keith Earls be going in? Should Conway be retaining it? Should Keenan move back to the wing? There's a lot of different options, so nice to see that he's going to retain that shirt. And finally, Keenan, who had a slightly underwhelming game for me. I just don't think Keenan gets used to the best of his abilities. He plays perfectly well at fullback. But when we used to see him in that right wing shirt, he used to make such an explosive impact on a game. We really don't see it that much from a fullback position anymore. Does have a good kicking, does have good backfield coverage. But I'm not sure if maybe he'll be a little bit contestable in the air. I'm wondering whether some Damien Pinot up and unders, some Jaminet up and unders might put Keenan under a bit of pressure, especially against a team that will actually be better at kicking. Wales' box kicking and just general kicking last week was awful. So they're going to have a lot more pressure on him. But overall, 1 to 15, very, very strong, very experienced pack, and of course has had game time from last week. So overall, I think this is a really good Ireland team. As we move generally towards the end of the first half here, we will talk about the replacements. Now, the Ireland bench last week had a really good impact from the bench, to be honest. I was very, very impressed with how a lot of them got on and just didn't let up any pressure. They came on and immediately had big impact against Wales. The depth in the Wales team, not really quite that much anymore, so we'll be interested to see how they get on here. So in terms of the replacements for this one, we have Sheenan, or Sheehan, as I keep calling him Sheenan. It's my own fault, I'm sure some people will point out in the comments that I keep saying his name wrong. Cian Healy and Finlay Beelum. Again, this is not a bad replacement front row. I can imagine a couple of people, maybe you'd want Herring in there over Sheehan, maybe. But, there's a couple of big names there. Cian Healy, of course, a wealth of experience in this team. Very, very used to playing now. Finlay Beelum is absolutely up for a bit of ball carrying as well. We just don't get to see him have a lot of game time with someone like Tyke Furlong on the pitch, unfortunately. I think he'll be okay, though. In terms of replacement forwards as well, we've got Ian Henderson. Will come on at some point, I'm no doubt, in that lock position. And Peter O'Mahony had a great impact from the bench, getting a couple of turnovers himself. Interesting, Ireland have gone for the 5-3 split here. Really thought both teams would be going for the 6-2. Given that Ireland-France is normally so steeped with forward pack game, big call here to go for the 5-3. Ireland obviously back in the fitness. They believe they'll be able to take on these French forwards. And then in the replacement backs, we have Conor Murray will be coming on. I actually thought Gibson Park had a much better game than Conor Murray last week. So absolutely deserved to see Gibson Park retaining there. Jack Carty will be coming on at some point, I imagine, for Carberry as the fly half. I'm not sure if Carty can actually play a couple of places. I'm wondering if he can also play centre. But then we've also got Henshaw in that 23 shirt going to be replacing there. So a couple of replacements here towards centres, not necessarily people towards wings. I mean, if they pick up an injury to, let's say, Conway or something, I mean, Keenan can move to the wing. I'm not sure whether Carty or Carberry has fullback coverage. So Henshaw probably sided in that 12 or 13 position. But in terms of that back row, might be where their substitutions lie a little bit lax. But overall, 1-23, it's looking like a very good team. It's nice to see Henshaw back in this team as well. But certainly probably wasn't going to get a starting position given how well the other two played last week. I think this is a good Ireland squad. I think they're absolutely believing they can win this game. I think a couple of people believe they can win this game. But of course, in order to do that, they have to beat France. In France, who last week... came away with the result. I think it's fair to say they got the result they wanted. The 4 tries against Italy, that's all you want. The bonus point. Did concede a try. However, I did feel that France weren't in full fifth gear last week. There was certainly a couple of points where they seemed a little bit lost, a little bit of lack of direction. Running around in circles, running backwards, offloading when it wasn't really necessary rather than taking it to ground. It certainly didn't feel like the same France team we saw against New Zealand. Now, Italy had a good first half by all means, but one of the big things taken away from that game was certainly that the French line-out was experiencing issues in the rain. Italy were really managing to get involved with that French line-out quite a lot and disrupted quite a few of them. So I'm wondering how it will cope against Ireland, who have arguably one of the best line-out packs probably in the world. I think that'll be a really, really big call. But of course, they will no doubt try to adapt their game for Ireland this week. So starting off in this front row, we have Cyril Bay, Julien Marchand and Antonio in that front row again. So the same as we saw against that Italian team. Cyril Bay normally plays really good games, to be fair. Marchand had a good game as well. A couple of hiccups here and there. Unfortunately, didn't get to see any driving maul tries from him. And did have that one that got disallowed because... who was it? I think it was Aldrit put his hand on his back. I can't remember, managing to ruin his try for him. Antonio had a few issues as well. The scrum going down. Big pressure. Antonio, I like him. He's a really fun guy just to watch. He's just a huge man, but not necessarily technically the best technical player. So there could be a couple of issues there, but I think France will be trying to hold up that scrum as much as possible. In the lock department, Vorki retaining that number 4 shirt, and Valemsa in the 5 shirt, who I saw have an interview last week, and I had no idea he was not a thick French accent player. Really took me by surprise in his own interview. But they're both playing well. Cameron Vorki, of course, having a couple of penalties against him last week as well. But overall work rate around the pitch was very, very nice to see from him. Really working hard. So hopefully he can have the same game again, especially against this Irish pack. It's going to be some big calls. And then in the back row, a bit of switching around here. Cross moving to the 6th position, Gregory Aldrit moving to 7, and Jalanche moving to 8. So no substitutions. Just people moving to different shirt numbers, which is a big call. I mean, it shows the utility in this French team. More than happy just to move to different positions when needed. Now, personally, for me, I do prefer Jalanche in the flanker position rather than number 8, and I do prefer Gregory Aldrit in the number 8 shirt. So, be interested to see what this actually switches up, necessarily. No one taking over captaincy, no one taking over a different role. I thought Gregory Aldrit's work rate from number 8 was really good last week, so I'm surprised to see him move to that flanker position. Obviously, they're wanting maybe more turnovers. We know how good the Irish breakdown situation is, so maybe they want players in some different positions just to try and help out with defending against that Irish breakdown and the turnover rate. They will have seen what happened to Wales last week. Be interesting to see how that gets on. In the halfback partnership, Dupont, of course, will retain that captaincy. And then Mack in that 10th shirt. Felt a little bit quiet last week against Italy. Just getting on with his game, just sort of running the backs a little bit. Wasn't really seeing him dominate the game massively that we normally see from Mack. You know, the great running lines, the running from behind your own try line. None of that. Was just getting on with his own game. Probably didn't feel the need to expel himself too much against the Italians. But will, of course, be needing a much bigger game against Ireland this week. In the centre partnerships, Mofana moves in the inside centre. Going to have to change my fantasy team. And Ficou retaining that 13 shirt. Now, there was a bit of an issue about whether or not Dante will have picked up an injury. We did see him having that ice bag on his ankle last week. So, Mofana coming in, not a bad replacement at all. Again, very similar style player, just runs forward, face first. So, don't think that'll be a bad move. Ficou, I would like to see a bit more from. Again, felt a little bit quiet last week against the Italians. Obviously, we'll probably be having a bit of a different game plan this week. And then finally in that back three, Villiers, Damien Penaud, and Melvin Jaminet. Who, all three of which had quite a good week last week, to be fair. Villiers getting his hat-trick of tries, always nice to see. Damien Penaud, again, felt quiet till he had that one breakaway and then just shows what he can do. You know why he's in the team when he does stuff like that and gets an amazing try. but they really didn't back that wing a lot. I don't know whether they're trying to pretend to the Irish team that maybe they're going to be backing Villiers this week and then instead move everything to Pinot to try and throw the Irish team off. Big calls, and then Jaminet, who had a relatively good week last week in the fullback position. Very, very wet ball to deal with, a lot of high balls, a lot of catching issues, but I think he managed to deal with it pretty well. And as we slowly move towards the end of the game here, we will of course need to talk about the French replacements. Starting off with the front row replacements, Vaca, who didn't necessarily have the biggest impact from the bench. Of course, we saw him last year in the Autumn International and stuff, scoring tries for days when he came off from the bench in that rolling maul try. They weren't really using that against Italy. They may be trying to use it against this Irish team rather. Gross and Bamba will be replacing those front rows as well. Again, didn't really think a lot of them had a huge impact on the game last week. Taufai for Nua will be coming on, assuming that lock position in the second half. Flamand will be coming on in that 20 shirt, and Dylan Cretin in the 21 shirt. So they've gone for the 6-2 split now. They obviously believe this is going to be a forward-based game. They're not going to be wanting to expand this wide, which means it's going to be a much slower game. Don't expect a lot of tries from this game from France. Assume that it's going to be a lot more penalties and just helping their forwards go through, as long as trying to deal with a lot of the Irish line-out system and scrummaging that we know Ireland are so good at in this game. And then the rest of the replacements, Luku coming in that 22 shirt, and Ramos going to come on in the 23 shirt. So overall, a very, very good France team who we didn't necessarily get to see the best from last week, going up a very, very good Ireland team. Going to be a really hard game to call. So in terms of a score prediction, what a hard game this is going to call. I think if you're a betting person and you look at the odds, I imagine France are going into this as favourites playing at home. Ireland now losing their main fly half and their captain. I think it's going to be close. I think they'll be within one score. I'm kind of tempted to say France. I think I'm going to go for a prediction for France. I don't think by a lot. I think I'm going to say France by 4. Let's go with 4. I'm going to say France by 4. That's going to be my call, guys. But of course, I am but one man on the internet talking nonsense about rugby. So make sure you guys drop down in the comment section your thoughts on the game. Who you think's going to win, who you think's going to do better, who you think's going to score all the tries, whatever it is. I enjoy reading through all the comments as you guys put them down. Of course, we will be doing one of these preview games for all of the games over the Six Nations. So make sure you're subscribed just to keep up to date with all the latest videos as they come out. I hope you've all enjoyed today, guys. I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.